Map-ccidents with happy little pens. Let's journey down the road together and find out where it ends. Bring your creativity, forget what week will bring. Drawing, breathing, bringing all new worlds into being.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Happy Little Map-ccidents. So raise your glass of tea, in this case, or mug, and let's get drawing a map. What are you drinking tonight? So tonight we're going to be starting our first map. And please let me know if you can hear what I'm saying right now, because we're trying a different mic setup tonight. Excellent. Okay. My assistant says that you can hear me. You're supposed to eat it before it melts, Ben. Ben is having ice cream. Ginger turmeric, all right. Chocolate ice cream, so you also let yours melt. Great. But have you taught them to let it melt and then stir it and drink it as medicine to help them sleep better at night? All right. So I have already set up my new map canvas here, just poster board. And I have the only thing that I've done to prep this so far is just to figure out where my center is by measuring the center of my map area with my trusty straight edge. And tonight we're going to start by just kind of laying out what this map is. I have no idea what we're going to draw, what world this goes to, and that doesn't matter. Hello, Jared. Welcome. And same with you, T. Good to see you. And the others who I have already mentioned via the fact that I acknowledge that you're drinking tea as well, or ice cream. So what we have here is a half cup of rice. And this is a method that a lot of people use to start their maps off. You can use beans. The issue I have with beans is they're too big. What I like about rice is that it will clump or bounce off each other, and so you get little areas that you can use as islands, which we'll show in a second. The main thing with this is that it is meant to help you kind of embrace the chaos, because it's far too easy for, when you just draw maps, for it to be too structured. You want some structure, you want a guideline, but you also want to kind of give away from your human desire to order things nicely and in neat orders. Examples of maps that do probably far too orderly would be something like Oz, the land of Oz. It's very, very, very rigid and structured. But if we're trying to create a map that feels like it comes off of another planet, a real planet, we want a bit of chaos. So I'm using rice, and I'll show you a little bit just with what we've got right here now. Is I've got some rice here, and all I'm going to do is take my pencil, of which, if I want to, I start with an 07 millimeter, but I also have a big old fat mechanical pencil just for getting guidelines down. And I'm not going to be pressing hard because eventually we're going to go in and finish this with pens. But all you're doing is finding the rice and surrounding it. If it moves the rice a little bit, oops, then you move that piece of rice away or leave it there. Maybe that rice goes somewhere else. But I've got this group of rice here, which might be a little group of islands sitting right here. And I might go in later and even polish those up. But right now I know that there's islands right here. And that's just because I poured out a little bit of rice. What happens when we pour out a lot of rice? Right now it's just a pile. But with that, we can then start toying around with our fingers to create some land masses. Maybe some holes start appearing in the middle for a lake. It's like playing with Play-Doh. Get messy, let things spread out. You can always undo things or let it be a happy little accident. Hi, Nitha. So I've got this landmass here, which might be one of our continents. And the fact that it's very dense here and over here it's quite spread out, maybe this right here is a bit of shattered islands out here, and over here is going to be some kind of mountain ridge. But right now what we've just established is a bit of a continent's general area, right? So I'm going to go in now with my pencil, and I'm just going to start tracing around the rice. If there's any part that I start to feel is maybe too structured, I can jump in and just push the rice out of the way. Don't let the rice tell you what to do. Just let it be a guide. And I'm going to go into the rice here because I feel like this group of rice that I just went inside of is actually a bit of an island grouping off the coast. And the fact that this feels like it go in for a while, maybe it's a really deep river mouth entrance. This is really just sketch phase for you trying to figure out what you want your map to start to look like. And I've got this whole map here. This is just one area. And while you're even starting, you don't want to start on all of it at once. You're starting in one area. And you don't even know if this is where maybe a story may focus in. It may be somewhere else, but it's going to inform where other land masses are. And you don't know how big this map is. Maybe this whole map is not even the whole world. It's just a part of the size of Australia or the US or anywhere. But you could say, no, this is the whole world. And if it's the whole world, what does that mean? What kind of oceans do you want to have? What size of oceans do you want to have? What size of waves do you want to have? Which size of oceans will inform? So we're just starting here, but then we could start to work around this entire map. Maybe this whole center here is an ocean. How big is this ocean? We could say, okay, we want the center of the map to be the center of the world, an area that everything can revolve around. I've got this compass here, so I can lock it here on the very center of my map and say, okay, where this group of islands that we had, I want an ocean that's going to be about this size. So let's just draw ourselves a circle. It's just a guideline later, so we can tell the rice later that we don't want it to come too far into this particular ocean. There'll be other oceans, but we now know the center has an ocean that maybe several land masses all revolve around. All right, so I'm going to continue along with my little coast over here. I'm going fast because we are going to come back in here with more rice because I'm going to clear the rice away. We're going to do some more detail work. So I finished that circle. But I also, before we move anything, I do want to note that in here, there's this whole section that could be a lake or an inland ocean. Or maybe I won't have it come too close to where that river mouth is. Maybe it feeds that river mouth. We don't know yet. All right, so right now, all you're seeing is rice. But when I clear it away, we now have a landmass. Kind of a fun one, too. Let's see if we can change the lighting here and get a little more clear. How's that? Is that a little clearer there? So now that we've got this, I still have all this rice to play with. And we're going to stay on this landmass to start. I'm going to use my rice now to kind of start establishing where mountain ranges are. I know that I've got these groups of islands here, and I've got a river inlet I've already established, rivers here. So perhaps a lot of these rivers and areas are fed by a mountain range. So I can take some of my rice and push it back in. Now I've got a bit of a mountain range that comes through here. And that mountain range is also butted up against this inland lake, so maybe it has a direct drop. Some really, it wouldn't be a lot of trickle, but it could in a single river, but it could be lots of small rivers that are feeding this particular inland sea on this side of the mountains. So now that I've got this mountain range, you don't always go directly to drawing mountains, but you can start establishing what they are by doing some shading, right? So I can go ahead and outline this mountain range really quickly and roughly. Clear it away, and then go in and just denote with a quick shading scribble that I want mountains to be here later, because that's going to inform rivers and where cities are going to be placed, because cities want to be in a place of control. We've got this river inlet here. Maybe this river that we started over here actually goes around the bottom of the mountains, because the mountains do end there, which means we're also later probably going to have these mountains become hills by the time they get down here, because we want that to come up to that inland lake. So now that we've done that, there's probably going to be other mountains on this landmass, but that's a good start. We start to think of things like what kind of environments are going to be occurring around both sides of this mountain. If we have an inner ocean, this ocean, which may extend in several directions too, but this is where the main body of the ocean is, it's going to feed water. Is it going to feed water towards these mountains, or do most winds come from the south or from the north? And if you study like monsoon, the weather patterns of monsoon and the interaction between the Himalayas and Australia, which is what causes monsoon, there's a north-south wind that travels depending on the time of the year, right? Cold to warm, warm to cold. But let's say, in this case, this particular ocean does feed towards the mountains. That means that because these mountains are so close to the coast, it's going to be a very wet area. The west coast of Washington and Oregon State in the U.S. Are a rainforest, and the redwoods are an example of that, because there's lots of water coming in off the Pacific. It hits the mountain and bounces and then washes back towards, and so you get a double amount of wet that comes from there. So you could go in right now and just start sketching out what you want it to be, but you also could just leave yourself a note and say, you know what, down here by this river mouth, it's a big wide river mouth and it's being fed, so there's even more water from there, so we want some swamps here. Later on we'll come back and make this a really swampy area. We might up here say that this right here does not have a lot of river, because the rivers go around it, so this is a very wet plain, but doesn't have a lot of water. It just rains come in and shear everything off, and so maybe there's not a lot of trees, so that's not going to be trees. That's going to be our plain area. Up here, I want forests somewhere, so maybe now that we're heading a little farther north, this is a good spot for some forest. Okay, so now we've got 4 different biomes that later on we can play with. We've got islands out here. Maybe out here on the islands there's a ship civilization, and they're always coming in and collecting from the forests to make their ships, so they want to control that. But maybe 100 years ago, another country in the forests decided they didn't want the islands taking their wood, and so they started a trade war, and now the forests are in control of the islands. Who knows? All right, so we've done this side of the mountains. On the inside of the mountains, normally, if water was coming from the coast and towards the mountains, it would cause a rain shadow over here, which means there's going to be a desert. But we have a lake here. So can you have a lake and have a rain shadow? Yes. It's probably going to be very dry and barren around it, but it doesn't mean that you can't have something there. A good example would be like, even though it's a salt lake, Great Salt Lake, right in the middle of the desert, it is in the desert rain shadow of North America because the water comes in, it stops at the Cascades, it doesn't go any further, and it doesn't regain its moisture content until it hits the Rockies. Same happens on the other side of the Rockies, because there's so much area between the Appalachians and the Rockies that everything is stormy because it comes north and south through Tornado Alley, but there's a lot of moisture lost, and so by the time it gets to the Rockies from both sides, you just end up with a very dry, high desert. So we've decided that water is going to flow this direction. It means that we have a rain shadow on this side, and over here we have another ocean, which is going to also be providing moisture. So we can probably, even over here, provide a bit of forest and possibly even some jungle. Because that wind that goes over the mountains, it is a desert when it hits this side, but over here, it picks up more moisture from evaporation. And so that means this forest is going to be dumped with a lot of water. And which leads into something I promised during our test run last week, was to talk about the Incan Empire and why you can start playing also with how your map can affect the technological advances of a particular civilization too. So the Incan Empire was not as untechnologically advanced as historians sometimes would like you to believe, and that is because they will state because they didn't have a wheel. Well, they didn't need a wheel. It didn't work for them, and the way that Peru works is it's a very steep and untreed rainforest area. As the water comes in off the coast, it hits the Andes and goes really high, and then it goes off the backside into the jungle. And the jungle of the Amazon does not have a lot of tall, straight trees, which means you can't build suspension bridges or ships from those. And if you don't have wood to make suspension bridges, you don't need to make bridges. But if you do have a lot of bushes that make really good ropes, you can make really good ropes. And if you have good ropes, you can make rope bridges. And so there was no need for a wheel in the Incan Empire, but instead they made really awesome bridges that could go across huge crevasses and with ropes, nothing but ropes, right? So because of that, the geography dictated that the technology did not require wheels, and so they learned to do other things instead, like have a really, really efficient form of farming and agriculture, and so much so that they had to keep splitting up the land because their population growth was just too much. Anyway, so you can start thinking of that as, I've got a forest and plains and swamp. Does this forest actually provide ship material? Is it a tall forest, or is it a really gnarly bit of wood that's great for art and carving, and cool houses, and they're really structurally sound the way that they're built, but they're short, but not good ships. So maybe this isn't a ship civilization. Maybe this jungle is a redwood type strait, and they have really good ships. So it's a jungle that is a shipbuilding civilization. Anyway, cool things to think about while you're playing and just settling in. So T, if you got all your supplies now, it looks like, get yourself some rice and start spreading it around your paper and just start fiddling around with what you want. Be thinking about how your rivers are flowing down the mountains, and if they're going to be and rivers. Remember that rivers rarely split; they usually converge towards something. So rather than working from the mountains out, if you work from the coast in, it'll start to inform where your rivers are. If you say, yeah, exactly, Tori. She says, but what if I just really want a desert here? Great, put a desert there. And then be considering, how can you keep it arid? How do you keep the water from ever getting there? Is that by putting an island out in the way that tends to draw a lot of moisture towards it? because it's a big island, like New Zealand, or is it a or is it that it's well it's your world, do what you want, but how can you ensure that there's a reason for this? If there's a desert there, what is next door, and why is that next door? Is it desert because there's just not a lot of moisture, or is it sandy? Because you can have deserts in the middle of nowhere, middle of a forest, and suddenly there's sand. Well, it's because there's just lots of sand there. Yes, or you can cheat and just say magic, always. So I've got this first landmass. I'm going to start playing with the second landmass by taking my rice and just pushing it over here. And I'm going to start toying with a southern landmass that, because of what you said, Tori, we're going to make it a desert landmass so that we can have a microwave effect between this desert land, and I'm going to have mountains farther to the north that are going to cause a draw of cold and hot air. Okay? All right. Ready? Let's make another continent. And Tori, this can also be a way for you to use magic. Now it's an angry desert. You just put the hand of God down there and do whatever you want. Oh, now it's a velociraptor. And I have put animal faces at times into my world. If you look to the north in Calatai on the Calatian map, the Lupin Fang Sea is called that because it has since changed a little bit, but it originally was built to look like a wolf's mouth and a dragon's face from the far north, biting at each other. So it became the Lupin Fang Sea. And it looks less wolfy now, but it still has the name. All right, so even though I've made this kind of looks like a raptor, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it like that. Which means I'm also going to make sure that those pieces of rice tell me exactly where the teeth go. And maybe it literally is a dragon's skull. Maybe this is a giant Tiamat that died one day, and their body is the whole world, like the foundation of Greek mythology and Viking mythology. And just saying that, maybe this whole world is going to be, maybe we'll call, you know what? We're going to call this map for now is going to be called, I'm going to misspell it, but we're going to call it Jormungandr. Which was the world serpent of Norse mythology. So this is now the Jormungandr map. Which is also going to help us to inform where our mountains go, right? Because we can make the remains of this dragon three-dimensional. So where it's, I don't know my anatomy that well, but on the spine you've got the bits of bone that stick sideways in the neck, and then later on become ribs, right? So those ossiforms or whatever sticking out of the side are going to be individual maps or individual whatever you call them, mountains, those things. It is fitting too that our serpent map, the dragon is smiling at us. And I know you miss it from last week, but if you can't quite pick it up, my wife's on the other end of the room laughing at me right now. not entirely sure how to spell it, but it is called the Jormungandr is the Viking world serpent. All right. There you go. Oh, it even has umlauts over it. Oh, making me happy. Cool. All right. So I'm going to clear this one away. And I'm going to put some mountains back in. So T, if you didn't see it last time when I was doing it, I come back in later with some rice, and I can form some mountain ranges. And when we're tracing these, we don't really got to be really detailed. You just want to get an outline of it, and then I'm going to go in and shade it, just to mark that later I do want to put in mountains. And we'll probably do that next week. I'm not going to start inking until we really have an idea of where everything is, because rumor is ink is really hard to erase, and it's not fun. All right. Cool. All right. So now I've got my second landmass here. And now that I know that there is a dragon's head here, it means there's probably going to be some sort of body. Maybe this right over here that we already did is its hip. So it comes all the way around here to its hip. And then we can go back off here later and do its tail. But that means we do need a curve of the neck. And I apologize, Sparrow, that I don't have just a giant French curve. What are you gonna do, right? So right here is probably where its neck's gonna go in here. We'll give it a little bit of an S curve. So I'm gonna go here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and give it a curve there, and then about here. All right, kind of gives us a little bit of a guide. If we said this over here is its hip, it means over here is going to be its thorax. I'm just kind of telling myself where I'm going to want to put that rice later. Cool. All right, that's a good start. All right, I'm going to pause here and see what's actually happening here in the comments. Well, we now know that Sparrow's writing a science fiction. Oh, that says cheese. Oh, okay, there you go. I was sorry, I was pulling a Tory there and clicking on every single comment. All right. I'll put that on my schedule in 2040. Sorry. All right, so we're going to work on the dragon's thorax. I'm going to skip the neck for a little bit so we have something to attach it towards. And we'll come in here, spread out our rice again. Okay, And, you know, it's a little bit too structured. So we're going to get in there and mess it up. Did it have wings? Did it not have wings? And that maybe it fell to this orb. So we'll give it a place where the wing broke off. Maybe this is only one half of the world and the wings are on the backside. Wind blown, wiggling. Probably should throw a beefy arm on there, huh? For good measure. All right. Yeah, this is good. I like that. All right, cool. I'm going to get in here and I'm going to start tracing. And, you know, I'm going quickly around a lot of this rice, but you can really get in there and get around every little bit of rice. I think I saw somebody online take like a 20-pound bag of rice and put out a poster. It was like 8 feet by 6 feet, and just pour all the rice out. And seems like a waste of rice that I'd rather be eating. You know, I just used half a cup here. You know, I'm kind of wondering if it has arms in the center of the ocean. Do we need to put like the fingers of its claw coming up out of the ocean, right in the middle? Trisha, I think my wife found her tribe. There are a small handful of movies that we will quote every line, but I'm gonna say Larry is probably the most quoted line in our house.
No.
Because it is a guaranteed laugh from somebody who was a certain 12-year-old with a huge crush on Joseph Gordon-Levitt at the time. I mean, I don't blame her. It's pretty charming. I'm going to go into the rice here and find the dragon's heart. Let's see if it doesn't wish it was Draco. All right, cool. While we're here, we'll make some mountains. How's your map? How's everybody map? How is everybody's maps coming along? Did you get started on yours, T? Or are you still making your tea, T? You're such a rebel, Sparrow. Everybody else is reading Jekyll and Hyde. You're going to read Treasure Island. You know, King Kong dies at the end, right? What size paper is everybody doing this on? Are you doing small 8.5 by 11, Or are you doing a big old poster? Or are you drawing inside a moleskin? You know, all of our mountain ranges haven't had any breaks in them, so we're going to do mountain groups instead on this landmass. Like that. All right. So we need some mountains. So again, I'm just going to quick sketch around the area where I think the mountains are going to be. That might change, but it gives us an idea of where civilizations can or cannot establish big cities. We always put gold mining towns. And you can even start thinking of things like, you know what? Someday, right here is going to be a place where there's going to be a gold rush. And start, even before you put in cities, establishing places where you can have future conflicts. Just as right here, in between these two mountain ranges, you could put a city, or you could make it a wildly contended area. So put a couple areas there of maybe a place where people like to attack each other. That's what we like to do, right? All right, so we've got a dragon's head, we've got a dragon's thorax-ish, and we need its neck. So the question is this a avian dragon that has a gizzard landmass here, or are we going to do bones? Tori's trying to rest her eyes from all of her mini streams this last week. How many different shows did you do this week, Tori? It's okay. I'll invite Sparrow on my own. She can come without you. All right. So we've got this neck. You know what? When it fell, it broke its neck. So it's got a broken neck. It's got a nice landmass here. Crazy, crazy girl. You hosted 6 in 5 days. No, in 7 days. No, 6 days. 6 in 6 days. Ben's just waiting for the stream to end so he can see his wife for the first time in a week. Okay, there's one. And over here, it's a gizzard. You got it. Do we only count the 5-hour one that you hosted as one? I'm pretty sure we get to count that as at least 3. All right, there's our broken gizzard landmass. Now we're going to work on up here. What we're going to do its spine from the bottom of its thorax. So this would be where its abdomen would be as well. So maybe we'll have to put an area here where its guts, after all these centuries, are still rotting, and it's a morass of thick seas that nobody can get in and out of. So it's going to be our Bermuda Triangle. And given the fact that this is its spine and all the different vertebrae are going to be in there, that can also basically be our pirate islands. So you can start questioning whether, is it a morass that nobody ever gets out of? Is that a story told by, by an android that's been lost there for forever? Is it told there by a one-legged cyborg? I want islands, so I'm taking them out more and more. I want islands, so I'm taking out more of my rice. All right. Let's take out more. Let's take out more. Okay, we said its spines, so we're gonna draw some lines through it. Right here in the middle of what was going to be our Bermuda Triangle, we're going to make a little note. It's going to say the we'll get back to that. Start drawing what's going to be next to it. Okay, I got it. We're going to write the leaky chamber pot in, because it's both grimdark and pirate. No, excuse me. I'm silly. The dripping chamber pot in. Yeah, way to go. Oops. I was thinking Harry Potter, which is leaky cauldron, but the dripping bucket. So this is our dripping chamber pot in. And as you all know, I am on Twitter and Instagram. My handle is Andrew D MTH. You think Andrew D to the nth power. If you need to find me, or if you want to show me what you're working on, or ask questions about how, and it's, my opinion does not mean it's perfect, but where a mountain should go, or what is this a mountain? What should the Lonely Mountain really do environmentally to the surrounding area? Is the Lonely Mountain a spring mountain, or is it a dry mountain? And that would have an effect, but it also would draw a lot of weather towards it too. So as you're looking at your maps and you're saying, I want to put a river here, would a civilization be there? Decide what resources. You can have an area of your map that is a terrible spot for a city, but if there's gold, people still go live up in the Yukon. So you can always incentivize people to go live in places that otherwise would not be wise. And you can do that to your people too, because it's your world. All right, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 big islands in our spine area. I might even put one up here. Now let's go and do it now. Up here. Oh, this one's fun. Oh, you can't even see what I'm doing. totally could, Tori. We could even, after we finish this sketch, turn the map around and flip it. So then we're looking at it from the other side. And that might be a way to throw off the scent of readers. So we've got a dragon skull. Well, if you flip it upside down, is it still a dragon skull? Or by flipping it upside down, can you then make it look like less of a dragon skull so that only your friends that you've told or discerning eyes can realize that you based the whole thing on the fallen body of a dragon. So the clues are hiding there in front of everybody. So we might end up flipping this whole thing around. We may even flip it on its side and say that it turns on a sideways axis, like Uranus. All right. So I've got some spinal areas, and I'm just going to do some little islands. I've got all this rice all over the place. So I probably, even at the end of this stream, after I go off, I'm probably going to go and grab every little piece of rice and put a little drawing around it. So I've got a place for all of these disparate islands. And those will not be all the islands even, but it'll be a good start. But we definitely have a bit of a land bridge forming here. Oh, that's kind of cool. Even though we put the circle here for the water, we still have a very large sea area in this area, on this map. And we still have this whole back side of the world too, that we can work on, which we will. That'll be where the tail will go. But first, before we leave, I did promise we were going to put right in the middle here Dragon's Claw coming up out of the sea. It's kind of fun because you get a chance to work with, you get to sculpt with the rice, sort of. It's kind of a fun medium. And you get to make a map while you're drawing. Put it in inks. Right at the end of after my stream last week, one of my pens broke and tried to put one drip on the corner of my map. So I'll be photoshopping that out later. But I think the last time one of those pens broke, the microns, was like in college 20 years ago. So yeah. Yes, it's called Dagobah. You could have a swampy, marshy planet. Is it realistic? I don't know. Maybe. Depends. It also depends on if you didn't give it a lot of land masses. If it was just a lot of greenery, it would probably guarantee it to be just a very rainforesty. But then you have to decide where does the rain come from? Is the whole thing basically a greenhouse or like an enclosed biome, and so it's just always just plain wet, or is there water coming from under the earth? So decide how is it swampy? Is the whole planet just a giant sponge? But yeah, you could have mostly swampy. It's just going to be a miserable place to live, which might be exactly what you want. Then you can just call the whole planet the dripping bucket. Very heavy atmosphere. Yes. It'd be very atmospheric, if you will. All right, so we got our little claw here. It's almost kind of too big. So I'm going to get rid of some of that rice. That's good. Abstract claw. Yeah, that's it. We made a lot of progress tonight. So T, are you working on a map for your book, or are you sketching around? Move some of these rice up here so I can do some island work. You know, Sparrow, you could also do a little bit of what Naboo was like, right? Because it was like a hollow world, and it was very verdant and swampy, and then underwater, so you could have your amphibians living under the earth and above and in and through. You know, the other thing too you can do, T, is you can take a map like this and get up and then cut the whole thing up. And so that you've got, you know, if you love the continents that you're drawing on one map, cut it up and then put it onto another map and shift around how the continents are sitting with each other if they sit better that way. So, Anita, I don't know if you saw what we did here, but we've got, after we did our first landmass, now that you're back, I've got my dragon's head, then a gizzard for a neck, and we've got body, thorax, and then the spine, which is our Pirate Isles, goes towards what will be our hips, and then coming up out of the center of the center where the equator and the prime meridian meets is a dragon's claw, and then later I'm going to add on the back here a tail that'll come off of the hips. So this whole planet was formed because a dragon fell from heaven and crashed on and around and died on the planet. Everything's always ready for a map, T. Yeah, and absolutely. You know, you can have it's just like with story ideas. You can have a story idea that you never get to, but you take parts of it and put it into other ideas that you play around with. And same with these, you can have one continent on a whole map that you've worked on that you love so much. Like I've done so much work, and then in another story, you need a whole other set of civilizations that you haven't added yet. So you grab from another map that you've already worked on and shove it into this world to an undiscovered country. Nobody in Europe could possibly have imagined the civilizations that were more than happy to continue to thrive in North and South America. And they were unfathomable. The idea that the Aztec Empire was establishing itself after Oxford was built and also did its own thing. It's crazy. It's crazy the amount of things that happen outside of what we know. You know, there's more things on heaven than an earth ratio. And so, you know, all the maps, you know, you don't want to throw them away. We never throw anything away. Just like good ideas. You know, good ideas are just ideas waiting to be used in something else that you're working on. All right. Oh yeah, these are mountains over here, so I need to shade those in, so we don't accidentally make them into just a bunch of lakes. Well, they could be lakes, but not this time. All right. So, yeah, we did pretty good tonight. So, what is everybody going to do for the rest of the night? Are you still reading anything? And what are you reading? And who's going to keep working on maps tonight? And you can work on it all week long. Leave it out on your table. Who's going to complain? Especially if it's your own house. It's one of my favorites too, Ben. How many words are you at so far, Thiago, tonight? You can always write, Sparrow. You can always write on the map, right? As long as you're not writing in ink, and come back later and leave yourself notes, because you're not going to remember. Nice. Wah, wah. That's not cheating, Sparrow. You just need to figure out how to make a rice pen for the computer, like one you can sell, so that you can put scattered rice on the paper and then sketch around it and use that as like a chaos as a chaos pen. All right. So we make good headway tonight. Next week, we'll probably start going in and erasing some things that aren't actual outlines, and then we will probably start working on mountains and rivers, and we'll see what happens. So we're getting close to the end. Is there anything anybody wants to share with anybody else? You know what? You can stay in the live chat, talk amongst yourselves, and you know what, Sparrow? You can ink. You do you, but I won't be inking for probably 2 more weeks. So yes, yes. Thank you, Thiago, for reminding me to promote myself. Please give the stream a like and ring that notification bell, and come back next week and we will work on our next portion of this map. Please subscribe to my channel. Follow me on all the socials. It's always Andrew D to the nth power, Andrew D nth, everywhere. Andrew is sold. And I do have books. I have written a Slavic fantasy that's a man and magical boy on road story. And then I have my epic fantasy, the Calatian Saga. 2 books are out, and there are more books coming in hot for both series over the course of this year. Thank you so much for coming to Happy Little Map-ccidents, and I will lead it out with a little song.
Happy little Map-ccidents with happy little pens. Let's journey down the road together and find out where it ends.